Hey everyone and welcome to the Empire. Today we got an awesome episode of The Mandalorian. So many cool scenes and references. This one was just a fun episode that was super fast paced, which isn't a bad thing at all. I was a little surprised at how quickly we got to seeing Mandalore, but I'm not complaining at all. In this episode we also got a lot of foreshadowing, showing Grogu maybe becoming the first Mandalorian-Jedi in a long time. We also got a lot of mentions of Mandalore the Great, who just seems to be Mandalore the Ultimate from Legends, but changed up a bit and brought over into canon. And lastly, we got the biggest bomb drop of all with that cliffhanger being the legendary Mythosaur. So we have tons to talk about, but without further ado, let's discuss the 5 biggest moments from this episode. And one last thing before we begin, make sure to subscribe to join the Empire if you're enjoying the content and like the video to help us grow. Now let's begin. Okay, starting with number 5, we have the Boonta Holiday. This is referencing back to the Phantom Menace when Anakin Skywalker won the Boonta Eve Classic, a pod racing event that led him to leaving his home planet to eventually become a Jedi Knight. This holiday was named after the planet Boonta, which was controlled by the Hutts but had eventually become famous for its speeder races. We even get mention of the planet when the pirate Hondo Ohnaka claims to have begun his first pirating there, working for the Hutts. On Tatooine, Din Djarin and Grogu arrive to get some help from Peli Motto. We get to see Grogu flip around just like Yoda and Yaddle after he's been training with Luke, which was confirmed to be for 2 years. So Mando needs a memory circuit for IG-11, but with no luck of having the part, they get an R5 series astromech instead. This astromech looks similar to the one we see in A New Hope that Uncle Owen and Luke are trying to buy, but this one doesn't seem to be the same. There are a couple of different markings that don't match up, but again, they could have just been cleaned up. Once the astromech is installed onto the N1 Naboo starfighter, they take off. Next we have the return to the planet Mandalore. While orbiting Mandalore, Din explains to Grogu how Mandalore was once beautiful back in the days when they had written songs about Mandalore the Great and his battle with the Jedi. He admits that he's never been to the planet either and instead grew up on Concordia, Mandalore's moon, which isn't too far from Kalvala, so all these planets are within the same system. This will also help Grogu later when he has to come get help from Bo-Katan. I also believe this is the first time we really get to see the planet in live action without it being a flashback. They have to travel through some heavy rain and lightning to get to the planet, but once they break through the clouds, they see how damaged the planet really is. In the beginning of the episode, they show a recap of the Empire just bombing the planet to death. And you might remember when Boba Fett said that the Empire had turned the planet into glass. He was being 100% serious when he said that. The Empire literally bombed the planet so much that the surface crystallized into green rock and the air had become toxic. Which is the reason Mando needed a droid in the first place, so he could test out the oxygen and see if it was clean. While R5 is scanning the area to check the oxygen levels, he disappears and Mando has to go get him. Mando pressurizes his suit, which also shows how the Mandalorians can briefly survive in space or underwater if they need to. It's just not super efficient, so that's why he can't just arrive on the planet and do the oxygen sweep himself. It's safer with the droid. While searching for R5, Din is attacked by a group of Alamites, a species that had lived in the wastelands of Mandalore but relocated to the ruins of Sundari once the Empire destroyed the planet. Mando uses the Darksaber to fight off the Alamites. You can see that he's still doubting himself like the armorer had said, and he doesn't know what he wants, so like Thor's hammer, he's unworthy of the Darksaber and just swinging it around. Unlike Bo-Katan, who we see later in the episode fully utilizing it to her advantage. Once the Alamites are defeated and R5 is saved, they return to the Naboo starfighter where they find out that the air is clean and the planet isn't cursed like the armorer had previously said to happen once Bo-Katan had claimed the Darksaber unethically. Mando and Grogu travel into the Civic Center. We get our first look at the city and see just how ruined it is. But without stalling for long, they dive down into the underworld of Sundari. They land at the bottom where they're surrounded by pipes and flowing water. This looks like the sewer system that we see in the Clone Wars Season 7 when Ahsoka and the 501st travel down to confront Darth Maul. So just really cool seeing all of this. They make their way through the sewers until Mando finds an old Mandalorian helmet, but it turns out to be a trap and we see this giant robotic spider capture Mando and carry him away while Grogu watches in fear. I really loved the design for this cyborg creature with its one eye and curved back. It gave off this eerie and creepy vibe. I thought it was done great, and it was really cool how it felt similar to General Grievous. Not only in its design, but the way he walks around and it folds up to fit inside the giant machine. But anyway, once he takes Din to his lair, Grogu tries his best to rescue him with the Force, but just isn't strong enough, so he has to retreat and get help from Bo-Katan. Grogu escapes the planet and travels to Kalevala, where he is able to get Bo-Katan's help, and they return back to Mandalore in her ship, which is a Comric-class fighter called Gauntlet. When they return to Mandalore, Grogu leads her through the sewers back to where Din is being held captive. On their way there, Bo tells Grogu that she's known many Jedi in her time. During the Clone Wars, she fought with them and sometimes against them. She was able to meet a lot of them when she and Ahsoka spoke to the Council asking for help against Maul. She's cut off when another group of Alamites attack, but she's able to deal with them much quicker than Mando was able to. After defeating them, she's surprised that they survived the Empire's attack and wonders what else could have survived, foreshadowing for later when we see the Mythosaur in the living waters. Back in the Cyborg's lair, it begins to drain Mando's blood, but before it can do much damage, Bo arrives and destroys the device, taking his blood, and then fights the Cyborg. During their fight, she gets her hands on the Darksaber and from there on makes quick work of the Cyborg. Unlike Mando, she is much more sure of herself and there isn't much doubt, so wielding the Darksaber comes much easier to her. Eventually Din will be able to do this, but right now he still needs practice with it. Bo stabs the Cyborg through the chest, but that isn't the end of it. Its head pops off and crawls into the giant spider-like creature that captured Mando. But she deals with that just as easily and removes its limbs until destroying it for good. After rescuing Mando, she makes Pog soup for him, but is surprised to hear he's never had it. She explains how every Mandalorian child grew up eating it, so after just a few sips, he gives it to Grogu. Just further showing how Grogu would eventually become a future Mandalorian-Jedi. Right now he's just in the middle, getting training from Luke and lessons from Mando about their culture and things that Mandalorians should know, like how to navigate the galaxy. Bo-Katan decides to bring Din to the living waters so he can redeem himself. While they make their way there, they talk about Mandalore and its destruction. But Bo says it pains her more having their own kind fighting against each other, which weakened them against the Empire in the first place. When they reach the mines, Bo also explains how she took the creed as well, but it was just for show, and to her it didn't really mean anything at the time. She also talks about her father and how he died defending Mandalore, which Mando replies, "This is the way." I think this is a cool moment between them. She gains a little respect towards him. It's also interesting learning about Lord Kryze, who we never actually got to see. In the Clone Wars, Duchess Satine, Bo-Katan's older sister, was already ruling over Mandalore. And last, they arrive at the living waters that was allegedly the lair of the Mythosaur. The symbol you see in the armor is forged and on Boba Fett's armor. Din removed his weapons and jetpack, then emerges into the water while reciting the same oath as the young Mandalorian boy from the first episode. Before he can finish, it looks like he drops off the ledge and sinks to the bottom due to his heavy armor, or is pulled by something. Bo-Katan quickly leaps after him and dives deep down. She rescues him once again and swims to the surface, but on their way up to the top, they move past a massive creature lurking in the water. Then we get a glimpse of its head, still submerged, and we see that it's the legendary Mythosaur. Seeing this thing was so incredibly cool. I wasn't expecting to see this at all. If anything, I assumed they would find a skull, but this is infinitely better. I don't think this is the same Mythosaur as the one tamed by Mandalore the Great, but probably just its offspring. But Din still needs to prove he went to the living waters, so I wonder if he'll bring back a piece of that, but I feel like at some point we'll see him tame one. Either he will or Bo-Katan will, but whichever does tame the Mythosaur will have the respect from other Mandalorians and unite them more than the Darksaber ever could. This was such a crazy episode that moved pretty fast, but we got so much cool stuff with seeing Mandalore, the Cyborg, and of course, the Mythosaur. I feel like there's so much we can speculate on. Who's going to tame the Mythosaur? Will Mando and Bo-Katan still fight for the Darksaber? Will they both unite and rule over Mandalore together? Lots of questions from this episode, but I'm excited to get into them. Now once again, I hope you all enjoyed this video. Make sure to subscribe for more Star Wars content, and let me know down below what was your favorite part from this episode. I hope to see you all in the next one, and may the Force be with you.
The Force is with you, young Skywalker. You're not a Jedi yet.